listen closely, because the drums of war in the Middle East are beating louder than they have in a century, and the unthinkable is suddenly sitting right there on the table. Imagine waking up tomorrow to the breaking news that Israel has launched a massive precision airstrike and eliminated the supreme leader of Iran. Most folks sitting at home right now have absolutely no earthly idea what that actually means for the world, for America, and for the security of our own nation. They think it is just another distant headline from a desert far away. It is not. The supreme leader is not just a politician. He is the grand puppet master. He is the absolute ruler pulling the strings of every dark, violent group trying to wipe our greatest ally off the map. He is the head of the snake. And right now, Israel is looking at that snake, calculating the strike of the century, knowing full well they finally have the unwavering backing of a strong American government again. Under President Trump's leadership, America made its stance crystal clear to the entire world: peace through absolute, unquestionable strength. The days of weak policies and bowing to foreign dictators are over. The days of sending pallets of cash to regimes that chant for our destruction are dead and gone. The Trump administration stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel, projecting a wall of iron. When the United States projects pure strength, our allies are bold and our enemies shake in their boots. If Israel takes that final step and drops a bunker buster on the supreme leader, the entire global chessboard flips over in the blink of an eye. The radical regime in Iran is nothing but a fragile house of cards held together by fear, brutal police, and the iron fist of one single man. Take him away, and the shockwave will crack the earth. We are talking about the sudden, violent collapse of the biggest sponsor of terror on the globe. But a dying snake still has venom, and its final bite can be deadly. The fallout of this historic strike is exactly what the mainstream networks are failing to prepare you for. The instant that missile hits, a countdown begins. The chaos that follows in the first 24 hours will dictate the future of the world economy, the price of everyday goods, and the safety of the free world. Look straight into the eye of the storm. The moment the dust settles over Tehran, the power vacuum will be unlike anything modern history has ever recorded. Iran's military is not like most. It is split in two. There is the regular army, and then there are the radical zealots, the Revolutionary Guard. Without their supreme commander, those zealots will run wild like rabid dogs off a leash. They control the heavy missiles, they control the big money, and they control the proxy terror armies scattered all across the Middle East. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis down in Yemen. Suddenly, these terror groups will find themselves without their main paycheck and without their master. They will panic, and panicking men with weapons are incredibly dangerous. This is exactly why strong, unapologetic American leadership is the only shield that keeps this chaos from spreading globally. When a Trump administration is built on the bedrock of overwhelming military might, these radical factions know they cannot pull America into their mess without facing absolute destruction. President Trump rebuilt the military for exactly this kind of global crisis. He created a deterrent so massive that even in their blind rage, these terror groups have to think twice before acting out. They know the line is drawn in the sand, and crossing it means total ruin. But make no mistake, the region itself will catch fire. The Revolutionary Guard will violently try to keep control of their own country. The everyday citizens of Iran, the people who have suffered under this brutal religious dictatorship for decades, will finally see their golden opportunity. Millions will flood the streets, demanding freedom, fighting back against the thugs who oppress them. It will be a brutal fight for the soul of the nation. To survive this collapse, the regime's dying breath might be to launch every weapon they have left directly at Israel. A desperate swarm of ballistic missiles meant to burn the region down with them. But Israel is ready. And with the ironclad support of a strong White House standing right behind them, Their defense systems are primed to hold the line. Now follow the money and follow the oil. If folks think the chaos stays thousands of miles away in the middle of the desert, they are dead wrong. The moment the news breaks that the supreme leader is gone, the global stock markets will shake like a massive earthquake. But the real target, the ultimate choke point of the entire world, is a narrow strip of water called the Strait of Hormuz. Over 20% of the entire world's oil flows through that tiny channel every single day. A desperate, dying Iranian regime will immediately try to slam that door shut. They will threaten to sink commercial ships, drop sea mines in the water, and choke off the lifeblood of the global economy just to make the world suffer with them. If America had weak leaders in charge, leaders who beg for green energy fantasies while actively crushing American oil workers, the nation would be entirely at the mercy of this foreign disaster. Gas prices would double, maybe even triple overnight, and the cost of groceries, the cost of trucking, the cost of simply driving to work would skyrocket completely out of control. But this is exactly why the Trump strategy of true American energy dominance is the absolute greatest armor the country has. Under President Trump, America became the undisputed greatest oil and gas producer in the history of the world. America drilled, America pumped, and America freed itself from the nasty grip of these foreign dictators. When a massive crisis like this hits, a strong America does not panic because the nation has its own endless supply of energy resting right beneath its feet, while the rest of the world scrambles, begs, and pays the ultimate price for relying on hostile nations. The Trump administration's brilliant foresight protects the wallets of the everyday American worker. America supplies itself, and America can even supply its allies when the chips are down. But the panic across Europe and Asia will be very real and very dangerous. The panic drives up prices, and panic creates extreme fear. The dying radical regime will try to use this economic terror as a panic weapon, hoping the scared global community will pressure Israel to stop its campaign. But Israel will not back down, and a strong American president will not flinch. The world will quickly learn that blackmailing the global economy simply no longer works when the United States is standing tall, fully independent, and unafraid. Now, turn the spotlight away from the smoke rising in Tehran and look closely at the silent capitals right next door. Look at Riyadh. Look at Abu Dhabi. The very second the news confirms the supreme leader has been taken out, the public statements on the global television networks will all sound the exact same. The surrounding Arab nations will rush out to the microphones. They will wave their hands. They will loudly condemn the violence, and they will urge absolute restraint to save face on the world stage. Do not believe a single word of that political theater behind closed doors. Deep inside the grand palaces of the Middle East, leaders will be quietly celebrating and breathing the biggest sigh of relief in modern history. For decades, the radical Iranian regime has been the ultimate nightmare for these neighboring countries. The supreme leader funded the rebels shooting missiles directly into Saudi oil facilities. The regime backed the radical thugs trying to overthrow governments across the entire region. The Arab leaders want the head of the snake gone just as badly as Israel does. They just could never say it out loud, and they certainly could never do the job themselves. But when that final, decisive strike happens, a massive weight suddenly lifts off the entire Middle East. This secret alliance is exactly the absolute masterstroke that President Trump locked into place years ago. Under the historic Abraham Accords, the Trump administration did what the Washington insiders and the foreign policy experts swore was completely impossible. The Trump government brought Arab nations and Israel to the exact same table. The administration united them against the single greatest threat in the region. That brilliant ironclad foreign policy built a quiet, unbreakable wall of steel. When the supreme leader falls, that wall holds incredibly firm. Instead of the entire region uniting against Israel, The globe will witness something truly historic. The world will see a quiet, calculated stand down. The surrounding nations will ground their fighter jets. They will lock down their borders tightly. They will step back and let the radical Iranian regime collapse entirely on its own rotten weight. They know that a region without the supreme leader is a region ready to finally do real business, create incredible wealth, and build a lasting peace. The power dynamics will instantly shift overnight. With the massive terror funding cut off right at the roots, the dangerous proxy armies will wither and die on the vine. A strong America, standing proud behind Israel and united with Arab allies, proves once again that true peace only comes when the worst players are permanently removed from the global chessboard. Do not blink, because the greatest revolution of the modern era is about to explode right on your television screens. The very second the news flashes that the supreme leader is gone, a massive dam is going to break inside Iran. For over 40 long years, millions of everyday citizens have lived under a dark, heavy cloud of absolute terror. Women beaten in the streets, young students locked away in the dead of night, and families crushed by a brutal religious dictatorship, the regime ruled by one simple weapon: pure, blinding fear. But when that Israeli strike takes out the absolute top of the pyramid, the fear evaporates in a single heartbeat. The everyday people of Iran are not their evil government. They are a proud, ancient culture, and they are incredibly hungry for basic freedom. Once the grand puppet master falls, the underground resistance will pour straight out of the shadows. Millions upon millions of brave citizens will flood the public squares of Tehran, tearing down the giant posters of the supreme leader, taking their country back block by city block. The regime's brutal thugs, the morality police, will try to violently hold the line, but it will be entirely different this time. The enforcers will be terrified. They will be looking over their shoulders, realizing their master is dead and their endless funding is completely gone. The thugs will drop their weapons and run into the night. This massive uprising is exactly what President Trump's brilliant strategy of maximum pressure was built to support. By totally crushing the radical regime's bank accounts and completely cutting off their oil money, the Trump administration starved the beast. Past week leaders handed the Ayatollahs literal pallets of cash, directly funding the very police that crushed the citizens. But strong, unapologetic American leadership squeezed the life out of the dictators, leaving the regime weak, broke, and universally hated by its own people. When the citizens of Iran finally rise up to break their heavy chains, the world will witness the incredible birth of a brand new free nation, and a free Iran changes the entire map of the Middle East forever. It means an absolute end to the endless funding of global terror, and an end to the constant threats against Israel and the United States. It proves that peace through overwhelming strength is not just a catchy slogan. It is a hard reality. The violent collapse of the radical regime from the inside out will be the ultimate victory for freedom, and it all starts the very moment that single historic airstrike finally lands. Stop whatever you are doing and listen to the massive roar echoing across the oceans. The very second that historic strike lands in Tehran, the absolute greatest fighting force the history of the world has ever known will snap straight into action. Think about the United States military and understand they will not be deploying to start a new war. They will be dropping anchor to make sure nobody else dares to. Start one. When a massive power vacuum opens up in the Middle East, the global vultures always start circling in the sky. The dictators in Russia and the communist regime in China will immediately look at the violent chaos inside Iran and see a golden ticket. They will want the massive oil reserves. They will want the strategic water ports, and they will desperately try to rush in and grab the keys to the broken kingdom. But that is exactly where the absolute genius of President Trump's unstoppable, rebuilt military completely blocks the front door. Under a strong American administration, the Pentagon does not sit around writing strongly worded letters, and it absolutely does not wait for permission from useless global committees. The very moment the supreme leader falls, the United States Navy will slide in and lock down the entire Persian Gulf. Massive aircraft carriers, loaded to the brim with advanced fighter jets, will form an unbreakable, terrifying wall of steel right there on the water. The surrounding American military bases will light up, fully armed and completely ready for action. The message beamed directly to Moscow, Beijing, and every other bad actor on the globe will be crystal clear. Do not move a single inch. This is the ultimate, undeniable proof of peace through unbelievable strength. Weak leaders always invite global chaos because they project nothing but fear, apology, and hesitation. When foreign enemies see weakness in Washington, they aggressively push the boundaries. But when the Trump administration rebuilt the American armed forces into a lethal, perfectly tuned machine, it created an absolute force field around the free world. Israel can confidently take the ultimate historic shot to remove the head of the terror snake because they know the American eagle is aggressively guarding the skies. No foreign power will dare to cross that glowing red line. The enemies of freedom know that testing a strong, resolute American president will result in total ruin. The American military will not even need to fire a single missile to keep the greedy vultures away. The pure, overwhelming sight of American warships sitting silently in the Gulf will freeze the entire world in its tracks. The region will be safely sealed off in a ring of iron, allowing the brave citizens inside Iran to finish taking their country back without any outside interference. Look closely at the horizon, because a brand new day is finally breaking across the most dangerous desert on Earth when the dust of that historic Israeli airstrike finally clears and the supreme leader is nothing but a dark memory. The entire globe will take a massive, collective breath of fresh air. This is the exact moment the history books will record as the ultimate turning point of the century. The head of the terror snake is completely severed. The underground funding for global chaos instantly dries up, and the worst sponsor of violence the world has ever seen is erased from the map forever. The fallout of this single, decisive action is the absolute triumph of true American strength over weak, cowardly appeasement. For decades, politicians in Washington tried to buy peace with the radical Iranian regime. They bowed, they negotiated, and they handed over mountains of cash while the world burned. But President Trump knew that absolute monsters do not respect pieces of paper, and they absolutely do not respect weakness. Monsters only respect an iron fist. By completely backing our greatest ally, Israel, and rebuilding an unstoppable American military, the Trump administration created the exact conditions that made this ultimate victory possible. When the heavy shadow of the regime is finally lifted, the Middle East will entirely transform. Without the grand puppet master pulling the strings, the surrounding Arab nations and Israel will forge an unbreakable alliance of incredible wealth, amazing innovation, and lasting peace. The brave citizens of Iran will finally rebuild their beautiful, ancient country without brutal religious thugs standing on their necks. The everyday American family will be safe and totally secure, knowing that the endless threats from overseas are permanently dead and buried deep in the sand. This is not just another passing news headline. This is the monumental dawn of a brilliant new era. It proves once and for all that when America stands tall, unapologetic, and fiercely protective of its allies, the absolute worst evils on this planet are forced to completely collapse. The world becomes a vastly safer place when the good guys stop apologizing and finally take the hardest, necessary shots. Remember this moment. Understand the massive shift happening right beneath your feet, and always know that true, lasting peace only comes through undeniable, absolute strength. Keep your eyes wide open, because the world is changing forever, right before your very eyes.